I thought I would talk about interracial relationships and more hyper focused on the white male in interracial relationships because, let's be honest here, is it really interracial if, say, a black man goes and pursues white women? I mean, by definition, but that itself is its own subculture, and I want to be more focused on who really starts and defines interracial relationships. Also, I want to talk more about how the white man is in interracial relationships. So again, you might have those weird cases of like a Spanish male, Indian male, black male, kind of in their own, they marry a white woman or something like that, or within non-whites marrying non-whites or something. But that case is actually small compared to the long numbers of white men pursuing non-white women. And I think that has a better focus of what it means to be in an interracial relationship, meaning that it's a white male at first. So, growing up in the Delaware Valley, especially near Philadelphia, it's quite common. There's actually a clash between the middle class and the upper mobile class. The upper mobile class, they're the ones in Philly for a bit until they move to New York and California. And then you have kind of the middle class, which kind of buys into the whole liberal propaganda of, everyone is the same. I don't see race. I only know the human race, all that stuff. But it happens to be like the timid, quiet white kid that has a Mexican girlfriend, or a black girl into anime, or a Vietnamese girl, or some Southeast Asian girl. You get that a lot in Middle Pennsylvania. And I found that very fascinating because I am one in that petri dish of that. I wouldn't say it's a fad. It's definitely not a fad, but it is something of the natural outcome of how do you live the good life in an isolated place that isn't New York or California. So I'm more questioning about how many white men go and pursue their non-white girlfriend and start families with them. That's what I'm interested in. And there's a difference when you say girlfriend and wife. When you say girlfriend, even being facetious and say, I have a Japanese girlfriend, what you're really implying is that you have a girl that you casually go on dates with and maybe, just maybe, have sex with, but that's all she'll ever be. The novelty of a girlfriend, hence the novelty of a Japanese girlfriend, a Chinese girlfriend, a Mexican girlfriend, etc. But if it's to mean more importance, obviously, the girlfriend is a transition stage to marriage and having a wife and having children with them. And anyone hypothetically dating a woman is practicing those evolutionary steps, that this isn't just some kind of play thing where you're just going along and having fun and going on dates and spending money, right? Having a zero return on investment on women. The return on investment should be having children, having someone that loves you and always by your side, and to improve your quality of life. So I want to move beyond novelty and think about sincerity, because once you're sincere, you definitely have a plan in your head, just like a Jewish man wants to marry a Jewish woman, and say to yourself, this is what kind of wife I want. And the most bizarre references, Blair White, the trans right-wing blogger, said, well, guys who like Asian women, that's a type. That is a preference. But I would counter Blair White and say for a second, no, that is an identity politic. The concept that you once were a man, but now a woman, and you're seeking men to have sodomy with, that is an identity politic. And if you have that type of guy that chases after trans, I guess he's gay or he's blind. I mean, I remember there was lingo where guys who would deliberately go after fat women were called chubby chasers. Chubby chasers. I don't know if that's politically correct anymore. And I guess a white guy who goes after Asian women has yellow fever. And even my boss at my internship said that to me as well, so, right? And going back on these white guys dating the non-white girls, let's say it's from they're 15 up until they're 28. They might get a fling, they might have sex with them, they might put their penis in their vagina, you know? But my alarming concern is that how many of them, besides the girl friendship status, pursue them, have mixed children, and create an identity politic through it. And maybe Jared Taylor will often say, through whatever statistics he's looking at, whole not a lot, and it maybe turns out that the upward mobile whites who think of social status beyond anything else will of course marry the blonde Stacy, the brunette Becky, or whatever, because I guess whites are individuals, and that by voting Joe Biden and enjoying craft beer and waiting in lines and plaid t-shirt, the subculture of stuff white people like is more predominantly important than the pretty Mexican girl that was always by your side. And I think there's something problematic with that for sure. And not listening to your sexuality and not knowing what true Platonism is. So for example, let's suppose you have the white guy that really likes black girls. And by the time he's 16, 17, he likes black women. And he's a white man that chases after black women, right? Or a young white teenager. He tries and he gets almost there, but he just doesn't have the hood swang, the ebonics, whatever. And so, what if throughout the last decade, through 18 to 28, this white man who tries so hard to pursue black women, to find that black girlfriend, is in pain because all the black girls he just happenstancely try to date are not only dysfunctional, primitive, and hate whitey, but they just don't respect him or see him through the love that he's committed to them. And this white guy constantly shows down how much he loves him, how much he'll put a ring on her finger and be with her. And yet the black woman, she's being brainwashed by neoliberal politics, and she says, well, I'm young. I want to be hedonistic and do whatever I want. And there's just something wrong with that, too, on the non-white girl side, because the white man means so much well. And this is what I'm now thinking and getting into this, is that the white man who secretly and openly prefers a non-white wife and goes in his way is harmed like he is any other woman pursuing them. But in particular, it is more difficult pursuing your desire that is outside the norm. It's kind of like being a gay guy trying to find his gay husband. It's almost impossible. And I think right now, a young white man who's open about finding that non-white wife of particular background, he has to deal with the individualism as well, that she could be dysfunctional or something and just not see how much he loves them. So now I want to get into the fact that, this is an issue right now in our modern era, that there is something wrong with female sexuality no matter what race, that female hypergamy is bad, that they will go with the highest social status man, and they're basing their desires off of materialistic whims, and then by the time they're in their late 30s or 40s, they become actually rational, and that's when they start going after teenage and 20-something guys, hence Cougar Mom. But if they're, I think if our state had a certain amount of law and culture, it's definitely true. I do think the number of white male, Asian female is a growing number. I think this number is growing, and it's been growing since the 2000s era. Predominantly whites and Chinese or Koreans or Southeast Asians. And this has naturally been happening because you have a state romanticizing that the nerdy white male who's really smart and intelligent gets with the soft-spoken, kind Asian female who has a high IQ and wants everything good to happen. And that balances each other out. And I think what I'm not seeing here, and here's my beginning complaint with the interracial thing, white males or our society still plays dumb to the fact that white men, on their side, not the Asian female, Asian feminist side, like white men side, but the white male side is still neglected. That the white male is still in denial that he is not allowed to openly race mix unless it is for the convention that, I see individualism, not race, which is complete bull as well, because we're going back to the Blair White identity politic manner. And so I think about my own life when I started pursuing women, girls. Well, as young as 13, 14, did I grow an interest to the opposite sex, of course. And I got a little suicidal when I was 15, which sounds very 2000-esque and emo. I think that's pretty normal. But I didn't pursue again until I was in my early 20s. Like 20, like I'm trying to think, like I didn't openly pursue until I was 24, but in my early 20s, that's when I was developing a POC sexuality, like an Asian sexuality, as I like to facetiously call it. And that's when in my mind I was thinking, I was 20 at the time. I met this Chinese girl I really liked. I fell in love with her, and I basically had a relationship with her for 4 years up until I was 24. And that kind of shifted me towards what I should pursue in my destiny and what I should go after. And I think today, I still pursue after, like, I have an ideal woman in my head, and it's so radically different from the norm that liberal society would call me like a monster or something, or think I'm some kind of picky, politically incorrect person, and it's not true at all. It's rather pursuing the good life and pursuing, the values, which is good. So I had a really hectic relationship starting a decade ago, when I was 20 and pursuing this Chinese girl. It didn't work out, but I would pursue other Chinese girls on the side, or Asian girls. And the thing is, I went with it naturally, thinking in my head all the kind of rad lib notions that, still trying to be a blue-pilled normie. Well, this is just my preference. This is just my type. Something like that. Or that, this is what I naturally want, but I'd rather keep quiet like a bourgeois nihilist out in like middle Indiana or something. And that doesn't work out when the other side says no to you for all the wrong reasons. You could be the most handsome 9 out of 10 guy. You could give them lots of money and just, get everything and woo a woman materialistically over. But the Platonism, the concept that you're romantically involved, it's not there. And so you spend your 20s, or my 20s in least case, finding that perfected girlfriend, in my head, that Chinese girl, right? That Asian woman, right? And trying to perfect that. You're almost there and you almost get it, but because of horrible game, horrible pickup, horrible seduction, your first time, inexperience, whatever, it just all doesn't work out. And then you kind of understand a further reality of the world, like women are different than men. There's racial difference. But as I said before, okay, if there's, whites and Asians are incredibly different, then why do I still pursue it? Why do I go? And then I thought, this is equivalent to like gay men feel when they're trying to want a gay husband or something. They're so set on in their mind, I want a gay husband. I want him to be like this. And I think that's a good thing. And so that is an identity politic in itself. And for my own background, I think now, like 10 years later, and a lot of trial and error, I'm pretty sure I might have climbed that ladder, and was successful in my endeavors, but I think to myself, and this is really, I want to get down to this, but so I'm not really talking about myself. I'm talking about other white guys my age or younger who are pursuing secretly Asian women or POC or a certain woman in their head. And they go with it and they see lots of failure, and I don't want them to see failure. I want them to see success. And in order for that success to happen, I think, is not just reading up on Roosh or Game or Aaron Clarey or anything like that. I think the issue which has to be resolved is criticizing the cultural condition of what it means to be an Asian American woman, or the criticism of what does it mean to be the white American pursuing within culture. And if you have that meta awareness, then you have parties, kind of like a state, that paternally dictates the institution to how you pursue these things. There is no institution backing me, right? I am my own institution. I am my own subculture, and I'm my own subculture I call AXA or something. Well, that's just shortened for like the Asian aesthetics movement, Eurasian futurism, anime futurism, whatever. I have my own written books. I have my own things. I'm willing to die on a hill for that because I love it so much. I realize that love is a passion that drives me forward to make me do whatever. And so I'm starting now to feel about the other white guys who have that desire, but they can't get it. And so maybe I'm kind of going through the self-help lane or whatever, but I feel like there is a certain amount of energy that it's not a white man's fault to pursuing an Asian woman, but rather it's the Asian American woman's fault for not understanding, in the way I put it, the suffering of young Werther, like the Goethe's classic novel. We are suffering young Werthers against an indescribable or unattainable woman that we desire. It is attainable, but whatever means, it's not our fault. We have to create the institutions and cultures in order for this interracialism to happen.
Well, I remember in my second book, Trip, I was very envious of a white male, Asian female couple. This was 2015 to 2016, and I was so envious of them. And they're broken up now, and it turns out he never liked her in the first place when I personally asked him, but he would cosplay as Cloud, and she would cosplay as Tifa from Final Fantasy VII. And she was a beautiful Chinese hipster girl. Big, thick, round black glasses and black hair. 4 foot, 5 foot something, totally perfect. And one of my traumas is that I constantly magnify myself, and I feel like I can't obtain that. Yet this white guy could obtain through having a 5 o'clock shave and looking good, and I guess liking subcultural things. And I guess his Asian game was better than mine, and I'm not only envious, but I'm influenced by him, and I incorporate it in sometimes my work and the way I look like. And I never felt any male envy until 6 years ago, so I often try to look like him in some weird way or another in order to believe that I can have the manifestation of a Tifa-esque Chinese hipster girlfriend, but, you know, it's whatever. It's just often how I think, why didn't that last, and things like that should last in a weird way, but I want to drink from that honeydew where I want that to be me. Again, I mean, the white guy who I used to follow, who dated her, he tried to do the whole Twitch gaming thing, and he got into Super Smash Bros. Competitive play. He tried dating a Japanese American girl for a bit in 2018. I became very envious, and I looked up to him a lot of the time. And I think he's single again, and he's been kind of, I don't know, he's kind of out of it. I think he's going through a depressive route himself, but I always try to reach out to him and say, hey, I like what you like. And it's kind of very bizarre because now I'm kind of the role model and he's kind of now in a depressive route. But there was a period where I would look up to him, and now he's in, I wouldn't say dark, I would say he's in a depressive route. He doesn't have a proper girlfriend, but I know he wants an Asian girlfriend. I know he wants an Asian wife. And I feel really good what I've done in the past 6 years of my life is because I feel like I'm speaking for him. And I'm speaking for all his romance and desires, and the same thing I wish that would happen in my life in a platonic manner, really. So I'm unique because I'm pretty much the only white guy right now since 2015, 2016 who's been pretty much open with Asian Asian aesthetics, Eurasian futurism, anime realism, Wamafel as a subculture, whatever you want to call it, magnifying it and just trying to understand that interracial dynamic. And I don't care if I get all this like liberal hatred from it or whatever, because I'm not into that. I'm into the truth. I'm into like what I've experienced. I mean, if our society like congratulates and celebrates a gay guy who was born in 50s, 60s America and now he's in his 70s living in a cush place in Manhattan, why can't you make the same intersectionalities between like the timid white guy out in Kentucky who really want to teach English in China or Korea overseas and his sexuality just happens to follow that, trying to get away from that Kentucky ideal. And I think that needs to be further examined. That does not need to be ignored and simply be called yellow fever or something like that. I feel like what I'm personally doing is sacrificial in a form of martyrdom, so I can help guys like him and just that we are all on the same team. And I just want something more intellectual and an institution to back it up. I constantly don't want to see these rejections and sad stories over and over again. There needs to be a learning process to understand what's really going on in the bigger picture. This is Pill Eater, and I recorded this on March the 8th, 2022.